Welcome to this week's Beginner's Guide. A couple weeks ago, a viewer requested that I talk more about the units in the game and how to properly use each of them, so I decided that this week we will be talking about the Spacer NPC Faction by discussing all of the units, mods, and the Doctrine which can be purchased from the Spacer dwelling. Next week I want to talk about another viewer requested topic, preferred starting commander backgrounds and vices, and then I would like to cover a different NPC faction. After that, I'm thinking that I'll probably alternate between discussing the remaining NPC factions and other topics. The first unit we're going to talk about is the Spacer Psycho, which I have to admit is not my favorite tier 1 unit. He has 45 HP and only 1 armor, which means it isn't that hard to kill him off, and getting in range for melee attacks can be kind of tricky. He does have a little stagger, and since this is a kinetic damage channel, there are some fun mods which you can apply to him once you've unlocked them. But until you've done that, he's not that great. He does come with this unique effigy carrier and berserk chemicals, which are both pretty special abilities. Effigy carrier will drop a unit which boosts an ally's damage by 25%. I believe it's randomly selected in a 12 hex radius, so you don't get to choose who gets the bonus, but if you only leave 1 unit in a 12 hex radius of the effigy, then that's how you can take advantage of that bonus. Berserk chemicals boosts your damage by 25%, which I think is what most people are going to use this for, but it also gives you fast movement, changing this number from 32 to 40, and that will allow you to travel 1 extra tile before you run out of action points, and if you want to sprint your guy forward, I think it allows you to travel 2 extra tiles. We can test that like so. Yeah, he can still only go 1 here with his first action point, 2 there, and now he can go 3 here, and if we go all the way to the end of his movement, 1, 2, 3, 4, that seems like quite a bit for an infantry unit. This guy, yeah, he goes 3. So we basically added 2 extra tiles to his total movement. Oh, and I did forget to mention that when this unit reaches prime rank, he gets morale, which gives plus 300 morale, increasing your crit chance. The next unit we're going to talk about is the Spacer Truck, which, like the last unit, is designed to be a little bit easy to kill. He's only got 40 HP and 2 armor, and he comes with a effigy carrier as well as a bunch of attacks which require you to get pretty close to make the most out of them. A reckless crash does a charge bonus and causes stagger as well as knockback, so you can knock people out of cover, pretty useful, but you don't really want to do that with this unit. He's going to die pretty quickly. I guess that can be okay, because when he runs out of HP, he will explode, causing, I believe, 12 points of kinetic damage to all adjacent targets. And if he's low on HP, you can always trigger self-destruct, which applies that damage and then the unstable construction damage to all adjacent units. So it does have its value, but I'm not a big fan of throwing away my units. I like to keep them around and alive as long as possible so that they can get up to their prime rank. When he gets prime rank, he gets bypass cover, which I believe is going to reduce the penalties to range when you're dealing with cover and units in the way. There are other penalties to your accuracy that bypass cover won't go around, but it does reduce if like a unit's in the way or if something's in cover by 50%. The next unit we're going to talk about is the Spacer Helicopter, and before we actually talk about these numbers over here, I want to address the fact that that's an amazing name. It's not a helicopter, it's a helicopter. And there are a lot of really clever text hidden throughout the game if you actually take a second to read the descriptions for some of the attacks. They're quite entertaining. I like the one for the golem. I think he's got an attack called Face and another one called Bomb, which are quite funny. Now, I like this unit quite a bit. I think he's a lot more useful than the other ones that we've talked about, the last two that we've talked about, because his secondary attack applies a really nice modifier, burning for 3 whole turns to a 1 hex area. So a lot of units can become a lot easier to hit. If we go up here and search burning, I believe it will say that burning makes it easier to hit targets. Yes, they take 5 points of damage and they're 10% easier to hit. So if you are a little bit worried about your percentage chances shooting with your other units, you can always soften up your target with a launch fire barrel, and then it should be a little bit easier to take him out. He does have crash down, so he can be used a bit more offensively and as a bit of a throwaway unit, but since this one doesn't come with effigy carrier, I don't think he's supposed to be thrown away like the other units that we've talked about. It just is kind of thematic that he explodes when he dies. Now, unlike the truck, it doesn't affect everything in a 1 hex radius. It affects the hex immediately. It'll crash to the ground on a nearby hex. It will damage just 1 hex, I think. Not the hex directly underneath it, but one of the other ones when he dies. When you get to prime rank, you get critical, which makes it 10% easier to get a critical, so kinda nice, but he doesn't do a whole lot of base damage with his primary attack, so it's okay, it's not amazing. The Spacer Melter is one of my favorite tier 3 units that I've gotten to play around with. I really like that he comes with 70 HP and the ability to melt armor. Being able to melt 3 points of armor in 1 round is very, very powerful and makes it a lot easier for your weaker units to take out the defensive units on the other side. This Acid Bath is also pretty awesome at clearing out cover, although I'd be careful about moving your melter too far forward, because a lot of the AI units will target him to make it so that he can't get rid of their armor. So it may turn out that on a turn where you thought he was safe, he actually wasn't, and the AI just kind of like focuses him down because, well, look at this, he can target 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of cover right here. He can hit like a honeycomb in front of him plus 5 more tiles. So that's a lot of cover that you can just blow up in one go. When he gets to prime rank, he gets an ability called Shrug Off, which I believe makes it harder for status effects to affect him. I think he gets +3 defense from those types of attacks. Yeah, +3 resistance from all status effects. Pretty good. I kind of wish that he had more armor or maybe something that made him evasive, but hey, you know, he can't be too good. He's not tier 4, he's only tier 3. The last unit we're going to talk about is the Spacer Mad Preacher. He has probably my favorite ability in the game that I've seen so far. Power Vacuum can be combined with races and classes that can resurrect units to allow you to basically duplicate a tier 4 unit. This tier 4 unit can basically allow a friendly Psycho or Melter to turn into it when it dies, and if you resurrect the dead Mad Preacher, you're going to have 2 at the end of that combat. I really like all the other little abilities that he gets, like Effigy Hysterics, it basically makes all the other Psycho units a little bit better, but you don't need to have Psychos in the army to take advantage of this. The Ardent brand, yeah, basically makes it so that all of the units in an army, when I guess this guy is the one in charge when you don't have a hero in charge and it's just this guy, then he can give them all that FG carrier. I would recommend that you bring either 5 Psychos with a Mad Preacher or a mix of Psychos and Melters so that you can replace the Mad Preacher in case he falls in combat. Even if you don't have the ability to resurrect him, being able to replace one of your tier 1 or tier 3 units with a tier 4 unit in the middle of combat is quite nice, is quite powerful. There's other nice things on here, like what does this one do again? You can make it so that a unit is easier to hit. That's pretty awesome, and when it dies it drops a space effigy, so another little thing that he has that's pretty unique to him. Also, this can apply Insanity, which is quite good. Insanity, I think, makes them attack their own units. Let me just double check that really quickly. The unit attacks are random, so they might decide to attack their own units. Pretty nice. I like that ability quite a bit. And the last thing we're going to talk about... Oh, actually we have a couple things we need to talk about. The fact that he has less health than the Melter isn't that bad, because when he levels up he gets more health per level up, and when he dies you get something pretty nice out of it. You get the ability to transform the Psycho and the Melter units in that stack, so it's not the worst thing when he dies. He has shields, so he's slightly tankier. He'll take less damage from each attack. And now I think we're ready to talk about his prime rank bonus, which is only morale. It makes it easier for him to get crits, but when you combine a crit bonus with the I think it's, yeah, this one, the effigy thing that makes it so that the effigies provide more bonuses, it's quite nice to get crits on top of that. If the psionic damage here is going right past the armor, that's gonna be a lot of damage. Okay, so in order to show off how mods work, I have restarted this combat, but with a couple different mods equipped to my units. This guy has the makeshift choking module. I believe my Melter has the debilitating strain. My guy over here, truck guy, has the hallucinogenic regulators, and this guy, the Mad Preacher, has the mantra of the branded. So the choking module, this guy can apply choking to units, making them less accurate and reducing their damage for 1 turn. The fact that it only affects them for 1 turn means it's pretty mediocre, pretty awful. And you may be wondering what that 8, that red next to the number 8 is, and that's basically saying that this is laser damage. If they have laser resistance, it's going to be a little bit harder to apply the effect. Since this guy has no defense, there is an 80% chance to apply this here and a 65% chance to apply this here. Let's see if they have any resistances. Nope, no resistances, no resistances. So if they were resistant to thermal damage, it would be a little bit harder for this to go through. This guy has a similar threshold he has to meet, 8 biological, I guess, % chance. And yeah, that means you get the same numbers here, 65% chance there and 80% chance to apply it here. Kind of interesting stuff to know. And we did want to talk about this next, so let's take a closer look at the effect that you get. You get it's 20% easier to hit the target, and they lose 400 morale for 3 turns. That's pretty massive. Minus 400 morale is a big deal. you can apply that. That will make them do a lot less damage, and I think it's impossible for them to crit if they're in the negative morale. So pretty worthwhile. I like that mod quite a bit. I think it costs just as much to get the makeshift choking module, so get this if you can't afford to, and apply it to your biological your units with biological abilities. Alright, we can talk about the hallucinogenic regulators next, which are pretty good. They reduce accuracy of a target for 30%, and it makes it so all attacks against it are flanking. It's kind of like the stun effect in Age of Wonders 3, and I think you have a stun effect in this one, which works the same way, so that all attacks are flanking. That's really nice. They'll make it pretty easy to kill units that are kind of far away. If they're far away, it's hard to get a flanking shot on them. You can't really move around them, so this will definitely help you take out some of those targets that are a little bit further away and have some damage potential output. They can output a lot of damage. And the last one we're going to talk about is this one, the Mantra of the Branded, which on this unit is actually pretty useless because it can make it so that when I use my support ability, I give the FG carrier to the unit that I use that on, which combined with which one is it? This one, it's redundant. This already grants FG carrier to everybody in the army, so you don't need that. And then it also adds insanity to your attacks, so that you can drive people crazy. But this one already has a strength 8 chance to apply insanity, which is better than this one. So honestly, not a great mod to apply to this unit, but you can, because he does have this ability right here. It's a psionic one, so you can use that to at least upgrade his damage output by 20%. Alright, let's talk about the Doctrine Wasteland Scavengers. It says that you gain a small amount of energy after each battle, and that this scales with the number of units that were killed. I experimented around with a couple different fights, and it looks like this doctrine actually works a lot like the Assembly Doctrine, which gives 5 research for each tier on a killed unit, and this just works with energy instead of research. So essentially this is really nice at any point in the game. Getting research is very nice in the beginning of the game, but getting energy all throughout the game is pretty useful, because that limits you on how many units you can support and how many spells you can cast and a whole bunch of different things. So yeah, I like this one. I think it's quite nice in the late game. We can take a quick look at some battles. This one right here has a tier 2 and 2 tier 1s, so that should be 20. 20, yep. Okay, now that we're done talking about the Spacer faction, I just wanted to mention one last thing before we wrap this up, and that is that I am interested in hosting a Age of Wonders Planetfall multiplayer for and with my audience who have been watching these beginners guides. I haven't settled on any times yet, so if that sounds fun to you, feel free to let me know in the Discord, which I have a link down in the description below, and we can start talking about what times work well for people. Hope to see you around for the next one.